Yo, hi, this is Gazy, and you're watching Phorin's YouTube channel.
After the dust has settled on the season 35 shuffle, Aura Electro, previous season's runner-up team, ended up being the one to disband, with Egg rising from the ashes after being on the brink of their death to salvage a reformed roster. So, let's break this down from the start, right? As you should know from my last video, Eames, team captain and IGL of Aura Electro for most of its run in the pro scene, left the team last week. And as I rightfully predicted, this left them with absolutely no sense of direction. I mean, Nevo, from what I've heard, practically broke down crying. I mean, him and Eames are inseparable. If they step apart from each other for even a moment, in game or out, Eames would not be able to function right. He'd be like, Nevo, where are you? And I've heard that from him before multiple times. Nevo has to rush to his side even at LAN before he just starts breaking shit, you know, he goes insane. And I reckon Nevo's the exact same in that regard, they're completely codependent. I don't know how he's going to cope, the poor lad, so of course he was pretty much lost the instant Eames left. As for Shock, I mean, Eames was practically breastfeeding the guy his knowledge, you know, babying him, micromanaging him into being a top level player all the way up from mid. Don't think anyone else on the team could be arsed with that or even have the knowledge required to do what Eames was doing for the guy. So from there, the team has pretty much crumbled. So let's look back at Aura Electro's legacy, because this was a fabled team, right, with a long-standing history in the game. So the story of Aura Electro begins in summer 2017, right? Way back in season 27, just before the I-61 Birmingham major. Initially, the team wasn't even led by Eames. It was in fact a godlike, since retired soldier known as Eskimo, backed up by his more vocal players like Hempus. So, in these early days of the team, they didn't get much done, failing to qualify for Premiership on first attempt and taking third place in High. Then repeating the exact same fate again the consecutive season, right? Losing quals and taking third. Their first season at the top wasn't much to write home about either, qualifying only through a default win, then proceeding to finish 7th in contention for relegation after mixing up a few players. Copenhagen Games 2018 is the first time their knight in shining armour appears, with Eames revolutionising the team to top their group, tied with MGE Chad, one of the favourites to win that LAN. Granted, it was the easier group of the two, and here's where we see our first glimpse of something that may become a theme for Aura, or that would become a theme for Aura, right? Underperforming at LANs. In the end, they only came joint 5th with the French team called Morsey City or something, with the core of Raf and Olga. So clearly, they've been outperformed there, outskilled by all the teams in the other group coming from Group A. Season 30, they came 5th again, so decent showing, but nothing spectacular. Then they went on to take 4th at I-63, an international LAN, so a very impressive finish for them, and by far their highest achievement yet, right? Then how come we see another miserable, mediocre 5th place in the next ETF2L season, right? It's all over the place with this team, man. It's all up and down. Their comeback in season 33 is their first time making playoffs in Prem, clinching that last spot and finishing 4th, only to go on to I-65 and have their worst LAN performance to date, finishing 8th place under a mixed team, Big Blokes LAN, and the aforementioned French team, right? So this brings us up to pretty much today, where they pull off a shock second place result, right, if you pardon the pun. Now, why were they having these bipolar swings of results? Fluctuating so much, particularly between LAN and online play. Would they have continued this sporadic trajectory, right? I mean, you can put it down somewhat to the lack of top competition last season, but you can't deny their beast performance in its own right, making the competition very close between them and Ascent, the former Faint Gaming that took third at the very same LAN that they somehow came 8th place at. So, with this being the end of the road, I guess we'll never tell what could have become of Aura, or if they'd continue on an uphill trend after their silver finish. Actually, second thoughts, yeah, the teams were just crap last season. Anyway, so now let's talk about this new egg roster, right? They even took on the Lego name, like I mentioned in my last video. But these scouts aren't two typical Lego players, and they've not got Ingi or Medic. And thank God, finally someone's seen sense, right, and picked up Yeehaw the Beast, like I suggested. And they've filled the pocket scout role with Kunu as well from the disbanding Aura roster. Both pretty decent pickups on paper, on par with their previous scouts, right? But this could cause some big problems, and I'm talking like catastrophic problems, right? If you don't know, Kunu is the player that Yeehaw got cut for at the start of this season, right after hitting his peak too. So if I were him, I'd be bloody fuming. And Yeehaw probably will be, right? I just don't know how he's going to get on dealing with his replacement. Like, you're going to end up with no scout synergy there with all the built-up emotion. You don't want to see Yeehaw when he's angry. Honestly, he's like a rabid fucking animal. So this team could be destined to fold now too from that reason alone. And while they were at it, they thought they might as well change out Jorge as well and bring Shock on board. Don't really care about this change. I mean, not much to talk about. It's just medics, innit? It's just support players. But with it, Shock takes with him the Aura Electro fundraiser. There were some rumours for a while that Eemes may not be the wholesome face we all know him as, and there was word going around that he's secretly a rather shady individual and was trying to run off with the Aura Electro fundraiser, reportedly saying, "It's my team, it's my brand, it's my money." We don't know if there was any truth to this in the end, but if there was, it seems he's backed down from this position and he'll let Shock take the Copenhagen fund despite attending with another team. I'm sure it's clear to see the connection between the three remaining Aura players, right? I'm talking Amarok, Azunis, Nevo of course, and this means quite a lot for the EU scene. It means there's going to be an inevitable French shuffle, right? Three incredibly skilled French players suddenly left without a team. Lots of orgs are going to have their eyes on these guys, but it's not just that simple, right? It's similar to CS. Back when you had this era of French shuffles like your LDLCs and your Titans turning into your MBs and your G2s, but there's so much intertwined drama and personal relationships between players in the French community. It's not just a case of throwing 6 snails together and seeing what fits, right? Everyone has their own grudges and best mates, see? We'll bring it up now. Obviously, at the top of the food chain, you've got King Pierre, right? Ombrak, currently teamless, has no iteration of top 5 rocket to lead right now, and you'd be certain, with the skills of these players combined with his, you could get something going. But it's a very exclusive club that Ombrak runs, right? The creme de la creme of the French scene, if you will. He'd rather bring in the Italian elite, or going a few seasons back, even Irish players, to fill in any gaps, rather than take any Frenchies that he considers as beneath him, right? And I imagine this goes both ways, as the Frenchies build strong bonds together while forming these little cliques and partnerships. They don't want to sell out their mates just to have a taste of greatness from playing with the legendary roster of Ombrak and his merry men, right? So, fortunately for these freshly teamless Frenchies, these imported players are either actively playing on a team this season or not at all. So, perhaps season 36 top 5 will have a vastly different roster to those we've seen before, maintaining only the core of Ombrak, Neo and Korbak, bringing in some new blood like these Aura players or Scar, QB, Asux. Then, you've got your other top French faction, right, which is the core of 3.5 stars or whatever bullshit French name they change to every season. You think I can read that shit? Now here's where I think it's much more likely that we see some action, right? Especially given that they're a currently active roster. So, for starters, look at Nevo over both of their scouts and tell me if you think either of them will survive Nevo being a free agent. I mean, Karnax and Alien really don't match up individually to the skill of Nevo. And Karnax in particular, I've heard, he doesn't have the best attitude to playing the game, always turning up to play drunk off of champagne and stuff. Not to mention he's been retarded in over half their officials. And retarded is the French word for late, by the way, before you get it twisted. I'm certainly not being ableist or all. Although retarded does also describe Karnax's playstyle now that I come to think of it. And as for soldiers on that team, you'd clearly be getting an upgrade too. In fact, I reckon Olga would snake Raf in a second to get that kind of talent on the team. If it weren't for the fact that Olga looks like he's straight out of The Hobbit and Raf literally lives on top of a fucking beanstalk, right? If he did that, it would be lights out at next Gamers Assembly, I'm telling you. He'd be toast. Toasted fucking baguette, right? And I know a lot of people are doubting Olga is even the one with the power to cut people on this team, right? Like, Raf's meant to be the leader. Or so you think, right? But I know what's going on. I know Olga pulls all the strings behind the scenes in that team. He's got all the charm. He's the de facto leader, right? There's a bit of distrust in that team over Raf's ability. So Olga has the people on his side if he did need to start a mutiny in that case. I mean, I've heard a quote direct from someone on the team, right? And I won't mention who. I don't want him getting in trouble. That Raf has Div 6 Pakistan jumps. Now, honestly, I'm quite lost on what Pakistan means. Maybe it's some tier 10 piss easy jump map that Raf can't finish. I don't know. But it clearly shows the team doesn't believe in his mechanics. And someone like Azunis could definitely fill that role with his nutty bombs. As for making their own French powerhouse, right, where could they start? They'd have to pick up the other lone wolf Frenchies who have disembarked from any particular circle jerk. Unfortunately, most of them seem to be occupied elsewhere this season, like Deemuls signed his life away to the Irish Mafia, Josh, Chris and Eskimo have him firmly in their pocket, right? Opti already decided to play with the old Theorist score again this season. Big fucking mistake from him, to be honest. Elico, as usual, has had to make his choice between the French scene or the second place Prem team, and guess where he is once again, he's coming second. Muller may be available, depending on his buyout from the Germans, and he'd love to return to a French team, providing it doesn't include any of the 3.5 stars players who betrayed him last season, cutting him after only one season playing medic for them. So now there's a broken bond there, see? I mean, either way, it's clear to me that no matter what, this impending French shuffle will shake the foundations of the French TF scene, if not the scene at large, and will lead to another spicy off-season chock full of betrayals, new friendships being formed, as well as some familiar faces maybe coming back. I mean, Night Terror's ban has expired after all. This video was kindly supported by Eon1, Blunt Smoking Sentry Buster, Uncle Dane, News, Carlozzo25, He Used All His Rockets, The Notorious ZOD, Z Captain, Lucky Badger, and special thanks go out to Minion George and Ahmad Fanza. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for an upcoming video? Do you want to take part in my content in a discussion directly with Phorin? Well, you can get these benefits, as well as many more, by joining the Australia Illuminati and donating in the description below.